Welcome in to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, the official podcast of your New Orleans Pelicans. A podcast dedicated to everything you need to know about the squad. Hear from players, coaches, broadcasters, and those who cover the NBA on a daily basis. It's time to flock up. The New Orleans Pelicans Podcast starts right now.
Hi, welcome back to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast. It's been a bit. After a couple of days off for the All-Star break, we are back at it. Gus Kattengell and Jim Eichenhofer with you, and we got a treat for you. At least we think so it is. It's going to be a radio roundtable with Erin, Todd, Graffagnini as well, as we'll kind of, I wouldn't even say recap, really, the first half of the season. More importantly, it's the final 27 games that the Pels have to play, and how important they really are. Jim, the one thing before we get going into that, I did find interesting, not that I participate, I don't think I can, when I look at the gambling issue or aspect of Vegas and
odds,
the odds of who the MVP is going to be. The only thing that really stood out to me is when you look at all the sites, and I looked at a page that had all of them, pick an app, pick a casino, pick a whatever, the cumulative, standings and rankings. 3 of the first 4 players are Western Conference teams. You got Jokic in there. You got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in there as well. Luka's in there. I mean, you have so many Western Conference players in there. It's pretty remarkable when you think about it. Just kind of, I guess, sets the table for the next set of our conversation.
Sure, and unfortunately, I mean, I think the guy that, or one of the guys that people thought was headed to either the MVP or top 2, 3 was Joel Embiid. That's been knocked out of it, not just because he's not going to be able to meet the 65 games, but he's not going to play enough games to really be able to say that he deserves the MVP. So, yeah, that is interesting, but not surprising to me because as we've seen over the years, it seems like the West has been the dominant conference. And although I was happy to see in the last couple of years that the East had kind of evened the playing field and been much more competitive head-to-head, it's actually kind of gone back the other way, unfortunately, now where, again, we're looking at the West as being much better than the East. And if you look at the best players in the league, it's reflected in that as well, the fact that so many of those guys are in the MVP hunt right now.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, well, let's just get right into it because we do have a lot of different topics I think you'll enjoy here as well as we have our radio roundtable with some of the crew that actually calls the games on the Pelicans Radio Network. All right, Jim, time to do our radio roundtable with the voice of the Pelicans, Todd Graffagnini, as well as sideline reporter for Pels broadcast, Erin, who's going to jump in and play a little JD here and be our color analyst for the next couple of games here as well. Erin, how are you?
I'm doing great, Gus. It is busy right now, getting back into things after All-Star break. We got a big slate ahead of us with 3 games and a weekend. So it's going to be a tough stretch for the Pelicans to dive back into, but hopefully they are well rested.
And Graff, I would ask how you're doing, but you look nice and tan, which means you've been playing golf.
I played golf yesterday.
There we go.
It was my last day off, so I figured if I didn't do it then, it wasn't going to happen for another couple of months. So, yes, the battery is definitely recharged, and we've got 27 games left, and I am ready to go.
We got a bunch of questions to get into here, but just kind of going around the room here. Didn't it feel, and look, I don't play, obviously, but didn't it feel, guys, like we needed this break? It just felt like not only the players, but all of us. You can kind of sort of feel it. Todd, start and we'll go around.
No doubt about it. Look, this is my 5th year doing this. This was probably I don't know, again, I don't play, but I was tired. And I just think the last couple of road trips really took it out of everybody just because we were traveling across all time zones. We had a couple of very long flights in there. Flew from Boston to San Antonio, one road trip. Flew from Portland to Memphis, another road trip. Those are 4-hour flights. And again, yes, do we travel first class? Absolutely. But still, you're getting to the hotel as you're packing, you're unpacking, you're off to the next city, repeat, rinse, what have you. And I just think it really, but we had one home game mixed in there between those 2 road trips at the end. And it was like, look, it's time for a breather. Remember, we had gone 53, 54 straight games without a real break. So it was good for everybody. And now, as we're going to say a bunch in the next month and a half, this is now a sprint, not a marathon.
Yeah, I mean, I think Graf, you can speak to this better than me because you're with the team on the road, and you mentioned the fatigue, and I think a lot of it too is mental fatigue at this point in the season. And I feel like pretty much almost every season you get a little sense of when it winds down towards the All-Star break that the team kind of is limping across the finish line. And I felt that way this year, that it was kind of like, and if you looked at the way that they played in the last 3 games, which were all wins, but weren't great performances, it just felt like, let's just get to the All-Star break and get through this. And fortunately they were able to get the wins that they needed. But yeah, I just had a sense that it seemed like it was time for a break. And, Graf, you mentioned the one home game too. When I was traveling every game, I almost felt worse when the team came back for one home game, because it was like you can't even really unpack your suitcase. It almost wears you mentally when you just come back for 2 or 3 days. I mean, it's good to be back, obviously. And it's good to not have a 8-9 game road trip, but I just don't think it helps that much really to have one home game
and
like
I know,
that.
And I know Erin's going to talk, but quickly, I mean, think about it, that last game in Memphis. You had the big lead, and Memphis comes back, and you think, you found a way to win. And then you look what happened 2 days later. Memphis beats Milwaukee.
Right.
And so it's like, it's not about ugly wins. It's about wins, period. And now just you took care of business going into the All-Star break. You didn't have any, major setbacks. I know the Laker game kind of stuck in everybody's craw, but you rebounded from that, won the last 3 in a row, and now you've got momentum going into the last stages.
Yeah, I mean, they really attacked those 2 away stretches where they were gone because of Mardi Gras and everything like that. But you could see over the last 3 games, as Jim mentioned, the defense really mattered at Portland and at Memphis, because you held the teams under 90, but you didn't score over 100. And I think that's because of that fatigue factor, just kind of setting in. They didn't quite have their legs under them. Their shots weren't falling the same way. So hopefully they can kind of come in refreshed and ready to really attack these last 27 games, because it is wild out there in the West. It is crazy in those last 6 spots to try to solidify that play-in spot or playoff spot. So yeah, I mean, got to get the offense going. Got to get clicking.
Yeah, Erin, to your point too, we were talking about in the opening segment with Jim and I'm just saying that Vegas knows what they know, but the odds are out as to who's going to win MVP. 3 of the top 4 Western Conference players. So to your point, the Western Conference can be fun. And Todd, that Memphis game was game 10 in that stretch where 8 were on the road. So yeah, there's that fatigue. All right, let's get going and focusing on the second half here. So let's start, Erin, with you. What game are you most looking forward to in the final 27?
I mean, I think that Draymond Green gave us all we needed as far as bulletin board material. We're looking at that Warriors game April 12th, right? I mean, I would, if you're going to be petty about it, I think that
you took my answer.
Yeah, I can see it in your face. So go ahead, Graf. What do you got?
No. But you know what? Look, you're exactly right. I was going to say the 2 Phoenix games. I know that, Draymond just kind of put it on a tee for us. But look, Phoenix that's going to be one of the teams we're battling for, that 5th, 6th, even 7 spot. Hopefully it doesn't come down to that. But, the first game of April, that's against Phoenix, and then that's at home. And then a week later, we're playing them in the Smoothie King Center. I think those are going to be huge. But if we don't say Golden State, then we're just, we're not paying attention right now. Because, I just go back a couple of years ago when we went to LA at the then Staples Center. And of course, the Lakers saved Anthony Davis and LeBron James just to play us on that Friday night, and we basically dirt napped their season. We've got a chance to do that in Golden State, though. They are playing better, but that is the penultimate game of the season, that game in San Francisco. So that is going to be a big one.
For the game that I'm most looking forward to, I mean, I feel like there's so many options that I tried to narrow it down to just the home games, because I feel like,
honestly, Jim, just say the Lakers. Just do it.
You know what? This is going to be a shocking upset, but I did not have the Lakers game as my answer for this. I think partly because I don't know if that game's going to matter. I mean, the chances of game 82, we'll see. It could mean a ton. It could mean, just getting ready for the playoffs, hopefully, for the Pelicans, depending on what position they're in. I actually had April 1st game against Phoenix as the game I'm most looking forward to. Just from the payback standpoint that the Pelicans lost to them in the Smoothie King Center. And I mean, I guess I could have listed there's a home game against the Clippers and a home game against OKC as well. So I kind of had it narrowed down to those three, but I ended up saying the April 1st game against the Suns. Obviously Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and Bradley Beal coming to the Smoothie King Center. So that was the one I listed, but I didn't think of the Golden State game, but I probably could have easily added that after the comments from Mr. Green during the All-Star break.
Yeah, to me, guys, it's just the same thing. To me, it's a 4-team race for 5 and 6. So anytime you play any of those teams, I just think those are the games you have to look forward to in terms of they're bigger than anything else. But Erin, I'm with you. Jim just didn't want to say he's absolutely looking forward to that Lakers game when it comes down to it. But let's see what takes place because I think they're all important. But yes, those are ones to highlight on. All right. So what's the most important games left when you sort of look at it? Is it kind of what we just talked about in terms of the big game, or there big stretches? Is there road trips? Is there home trips, Jim? How do you look at this?
For this, I just picked one game, and I'll give you a couple of reasons why I picked this one specifically. I had April 11th at Sacramento, and kind of to your point, Gus, the Pelicans only have 3 games left against all of the teams that are right now between 5th and 8th in the West. So
only 3.
Yeah, only 3 total. 2 of those are Phoenix that we mentioned earlier. The game at Sacramento on April 11th is also the first night of a back-to-back. On the 12th, they play at Golden State. So that road trip, I mean, it seems like there's no way that road trip that they have at the very end of the regular season before they come back to just play game 82 against the Lakers, there's no way that road trip, I can't imagine, won't be a monumental, huge one. And so I think they play Phoenix on that road trip as well. But I targeted Sacramento also for the obvious that the Kings are only 1.5 games behind the Pelicans right now. So I picked that one as the most important game for me that they have left to win.
Having that tiebreaker on Sacramento is going to loom very large when it's all said and done, having won the first 4 games of the 5. Of course, that play-in game in Sacramento to get, or not play-in, the in-season tournament quarterfinal game got you to Vegas, but that was a regular season game as well, and that really clinched the season series. I know you want to be specific, Jim. I can't do it.
You don't have to be.
I'm going the entire month of April. You got 8 games, and they're all huge. Now, you got a couple of outliers. You're playing Orlando at home. You're playing San Antonio at home, and Portland on the road. Those other ones, the other 5, you got to have them because you never know. You got the 2 against Phoenix, as Jim mentioned, the back-to-back in Sacramento, in Golden State, and then the season finale at home against the Lakers. I just think those 8 games are going to really define the season, whether you're a playoff team, top 6, or a play-in team.
Yeah, and Graf, you mentioned this earlier, but those 2 games against Phoenix, I think, are just huge. They're the team that's right ahead of you in the Western Conference standings. If you can somehow get from 6th to 5th, it changes your odds immensely that you're going to move on to the second round. There's a 50-50 chance historically, if you are a 5th seeded team, that you get to the second round. So those aren't bad odds. I mean, obviously 6 solidifies you at least a playoff spot, so that's great. But I mean, if we can be greedy about it, like, why not? Let's go ahead and get to the second round as well. And getting that 5th spot makes it easier. Getting 2 wins over Phoenix. They have the most talented squad, I think, around those teams that are fighting right now, but their schedule's about to get harder. So go ahead and take advantage of that and get those 2 wins over them. Was it the first and the 7th? So right there in that month of April.
Yeah, I would agree with all you guys in terms of that, because also I think it's a confidence thing too, right? Because the last time you play them, it looked a certain way. So I almost think, because you don't know who you're going to wind matching up with here. And I mean, those are the teams kind of like the Clippers, where it's just an offensive barrage or the possibility of that. So being able to play well against them matters. Todd, we'll start the next one with you. I want to feel like that 3-game win streak in which the team goes into the All-Star break in, Jose Alvarado was so key in being able to do that. So what Pels player do you think over the last 27, grab that crystal ball, do you think could be the biggest, most important factor or player?
Can I be blatantly obvious?
Yes.
Zion Williamson. It's time for Zion to look like last December. And he was there. He's starting to get there. We're starting to see the 30-point games again. We're seeing the 35, 36-minute games, which tells you he is in condition. I'm very anxious to see, when the team is assembled here and we're getting ready for practice on Wednesday, how everybody's looking. I would assume everybody's looking really good because they've had a lot of time off, save Jordan Hawkins, but he was only up there for a couple days in Indianapolis. Look, you watched and you look at all these other teams and you look at the All-Star game, which was a farce, but that's a whole other conversation.
Yes.
But you see the star power in this league and you see how, these teams that we're competing with, they have these players that can dominate and take over games. Zion Williamson is capable of doing that. And it would be very beneficial to the Pelicans if we saw Zion start to really establish himself as a give me the ball, I'm going to take over, I'm going to win this game. But he's also, going to be counted on defensively, rebounding the ball. When he rebounds the ball, which we hear about Point Zion all the time, when he rebounds the ball, he becomes Point Zion. He doesn't have to dish it or anything. He's very capable of bringing the ball up the floor. You get that gravity, as Coach Green talks about all the time. They're going to collapse on him. Somebody's going to be open for a drive and kick. So when you see the rounded as far as offense and defense, then you've got a special player, and that's what we need to see the last month and a half.
Yeah, I had Zion as well. I mean, this is really his first chance to be part of a postseason race.
Right.
His second year in the league, they were kind of quasi part of the race. It was like we're kind of on the fringe of the play-in. You're 3 or 4 games out. You're kind of there. And then he ended up getting I think it was a hand injury that kind of put him out for the end of that. So just really interested to see and happy for him just to have this opportunity to be part of the last 20 plus games and putting his team in the playoff race or hopefully a playoff spot. And I had a second part for most important Pels player the second half of the season. Trey Murphy finding his form as an elite 3-point shooter. I just think that when he's at his best, he gives the Pelicans something that I don't think necessarily any of these other teams that they're competing with has, which is a 6-man who can score 40 points in a game, who can make 8 or 10 threes in a game the way that he does when he's at his best. So I had Zion and I also had Trey Murphy.
Can I ask the group a question before, Erin? Do you know, and we really haven't talked about it a whole lot. Do you think Marcus Smart diving on Trey Murphy has had anything to do with what we've seen?
Wasn't that a basketball move?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean,
that's...
Marcus Smart's right. In the somebody gets hurt around me club that myself and Antonio Daniels talk a lot. Like, cause Trey, when he came back, he was the old Trey.
Yep.
And then after the Marcus Smart game, it's been up and down.
I mean, I think that that's when he started kind of sitting a couple games here and there and had the knee soreness in the knee that he had hurt. So I think it could become a mental thing where he's just a little unsure of himself and not shooting with the confidence we usually see him with or the aggressiveness that he was bringing even getting to the rack. So it definitely could be. Hopefully, he went back home. He got his high school jersey retired. He had some good experiences over the All-Star break that maybe they can kind of get his mind right and come back in here with a ready-to-go attack mode for Trey Murphy.
Who's your player?
Yeah, who's your player? Are you going to make it 3 in a row?
Oh, sorry, my player. Honestly, I mean, Zion, yes, I get it. But I want to go with Brandon Ingram because I feel like he is kind of the straw that stirs the drink here. And if he can get it going from the beginning of the game, set a good tone, make sure he's looking for shots from outside, and he's getting the assists going. I just think he's such a key in keeping everything together. So I kind of saw him as the leader that emerged when they made that run down, what was it, the April stretch run?
Yeah.
3 years ago when they got into the play-in game. And then last season, he kind of comes on towards the end of the year. So I'm kind of looking for him to just increase his level of play. His leadership is big. I kind of think that they do look to him as the guy on the team. So he can kind of fill that role. Then he steps up, Zion steps up, Trey, then I think we're golden.
I think it's a good player, especially Erin, if he shoots threes. If he does that, it will absolutely open up the offense. I have to go Zion just because of how we started the conversation with Draymond Green, because he's right on this aspect. If I just go down the standings right now going into action tonight, Minnesota, name me somebody. Anthony Edwards, right? I mean, right. On top, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for OKC, Clippers.
You can name all four of them.
Hall of Famer, All-Star. Denver.
Jokic and Murray.
Okay. Phoenix.
Booker, Durant,
okay.
and Beal.
And Dallas below the Pels.
Luka
dropped
Kyrie.
70. Labubu and AD for the Lakers. Golden State, Steph. But that's the point, though, right? So when you say those names, one, you think of a player or two that can take over and dominate the game. So I do think when we look at it, Jim, and you pose that question, who's the most important player? If you want 6, if you want to get into a first round or you want to advance in the first round, somebody on this team has to take that next level step. And he just has that ability. I mean, the fact that you just said he's looking like himself and he started smiling and laughing the last game saying, hey, I'm about 93, 94%. When I keep doing things that's unbelievable constantly, then I'm back to myself. And that's the difference. Erin, to your point, BI is awesome. CJ's having one of the best years as well. But for this team to compete for a championship or to, do things that this franchise has never done before, there is a reason a player selected number 1 overall. And that for him to do that, I think will be key. So it'll be interesting to kind of look at that. Todd, let's start with stat here. Which stat do you think important? It could be stat, it could be a player, it could be anything of that nature that you think is going to be the best or the Pels X factor in getting the goals that they want.
Games played. Stay healthy. Stay healthy. The more these guys, and look, we're starting to get a pretty good sample size now. And I know if you're into the analytics thing, it's all not that great when you talk about start. I don't care about all that stuff. It's about results. It's about having more points at the end of the game than the other team. And as long as the big 3 stay out there, your starting 5 for the most part has been relatively healthy the entire season. I know losing Dyson Daniels is big, especially on the defensive end, but let these guys keep playing together. The more they play together, the better it's going to be. And I just think night after night, seeing the consistency, you're starting to get a feel now of what the rotations are going to be, because they're going to shrink considerably when we get towards the latter stages of the regular season and especially into the postseason. I don't think Coach Green's going to go more than 10 deep. It appears that's the way it's going to be right now. So guys are going to be playing a lot of minutes, but they got to be out there. So
it's a good one because you can't know what your rotations are if you don't have your roster. Erin?
Yeah. I'm going with the 3-point shooting. Just because I think that that's such a key for this team. They really have to establish an outside threat to help with the spacing, to give Zion room to work. When they win, they shoot 41% from outside. In losses this year, they've shot 33. It's a huge difference. And they've made 13.5 threes in wins and 10 in losses. So it's a good amount of points that help kind of bring you over the edge when you need it. And I think it just makes their offense flow so much better. So whether it's Brandon, CJ, Trey, I mean, Herb Jones has been shooting great from the perimeter. They just need to get somebody out there playing well, a couple players to really help with them playing the offense the way they want to and giving Zion people room to work inside.
And Erin, I agree with you. And I believe, just off the top of my head, and I don't have the raw numbers like you do, you mentioned the 41% in the wins. I mean, you think about the last 3 games before the break. I mean, the Pelicans were not very good shooting the 3. So that percentage actually came down. But I attribute that completely to the fatigue. Absolutely. Because there's no way you're going to shoot the ball that well. I mean, look, the Pelicans were top 5 in 3-point percentage going into the last week of the season and then just cratered. And look, I mean, CJ McCollum was 2 for 14 in Portland. I mean, the guy didn't just forget how to shoot the basketball. He made 1 3. He's having the best 3-point percentage year of his career.
Yeah.
And I just think the last week he was like, he was He was attempting the threes. They just weren't going in. But again, it wasn't like he just, oh man, I can't shoot anymore. I just think it was mental and physical fatigue.
All right, Jim, biggest Pels X factor.
Yeah, my biggest X factor is really the starting lineup improving or getting tweaked. I mean, I feel like I don't know if we're going to see a change in the starting lineup if they keep having the lack of success that they've had, but it's definitely something that Willie Green has mentioned a few times. I mean, he's made a few minor moves, such as Larry Nance Jr. starting the second half in a few games. So that's my biggest X factor. One thing I wanted to add real quick, too, to what Erin and Graff just talked about, and credit to John Schumann of NBA.com. He mentioned in his power rankings this week that the Pelicans are a league best 17-1 when they've outscored their opponent from 3-point range. So made more threes than the other team. So that's a good barometer. But the problem is that, which he added, the second part of the stat is the 18
You've
times
only done
they've
it
done
18 times.
and that's tied for the third fewest total in the league. Only the Bulls and the Lakers have outscored their opponent from 3-point range in fewer games than the Pelicans have. So, I mean, when they get them up and it's funny to think that even if they have a poor percentage, but they make more threes than the other team, then that's usually good enough, as evidenced by 17-1.
I actually have that stat on my, play-by-play sheet about if you make more threes than the other team.
Yeah.
But the Pels do win, even though sometimes they don't make more threes than the other team, and that's because you've got a post presence in Zion Williamson and Jonas Valanciunas, and you get to the free throw line. It's not the recipe to win in the NBA, but the Pelicans are capable of doing it if they don't shoot. I mean, you think about the last game, what game was it? It was
Washington.
It was
their franchise record.
Washington was plus 33.
Yeah,
plus 33 at the 3-point line, and the Pelicans still won the game.
Game of his career.
Career history.
I'm going
very obvious.
I'm going greedy here. You asked for one. I'm going to settle on one, but guys, I could have gone rebounding, right? That's always the key. I know I can hear it right now in my ear. You constantly saying offensive rebounds, get those offensive rebounds. Dunking, for the love of
oh gosh,
baby eggplants and beignets or whatever it is you want to say. How many points in the paint do Pels players leave on these layups if they just dunk? Would be fantastic. But I'm going to end on turnovers, Todd, because I think it is single-handedly the reason this team has lost games this season, or games go into the clutch. And you lose 20, 25-point leads. And it's the unforced turnovers, I'm making a pass into the second row kind of turnovers that really kill it. So to me, the X factor, if this team can find a way to limit turnovers that haunt you in that fourth quarter, they'll win games.
I will say this, and that's a great point, Gus. Just checking the clutch numbers after every game, because the Pelicans now have actually won 3 straight clutch games. And remember, we made such a big deal about the turnover percentage in the clutch. We were, 21% at one time, which was dead last. We actually are creeping up the list. The good news is we're not last anymore in that aspect. So that's a great kind of off the grid type of stat. So, but it's good to have that kind of confirmation, knowing when you get into the clutch that you are capable of winning those games, because it was a struggle for a while.
I'm hoping that Erin has unlimited text, because I'm telling you, it's every game. I'm like, can we dunk? Why didn't they dunk? Please, somebody dunk.
Well, I just say it. I just yell it.
I constantly text Erin that. Erin, I want to start with you here. What is the goal for the last 27 games for this team?
I mean, just win, honestly.
We're going number here. Are we going sheer numbers?
No, I'm not giving a number. I'm just
okay.
I would like the team to just find their rhythm and consistency, because you got to be hitting your stride going into the playoffs. Obviously, everybody wants to be playing their best basketball at this time of the year. So, Graffy talked about finding their rotations, just getting everything, giving them on the same page, offensively, defensively, just finding their rhythm. And I think that will translate to wins.
Just get to the top 6, please. Just, I can't, look, 7 wouldn't be horrible. It wouldn't be. There's so many other teams that are bunched up with us. That's the thing. You just don't know. If you can get into the top 6 and not have to worry about a play-in, I think that's really the goal. Look, I think the top 4, that's done. I just think it's unrealistic to try to get into the top 4 right now with Minnesota, Oklahoma City, Denver, and the Clippers. I think they've really established themselves at the top 4. Those 5, 6, 7, 8, that is completely up for grabs.
Yeah, Pelicans, can you do the man to my right a favor here and avoid the play-in angst that we have had the last 2 years where we've had to sweat it out in April and have a game with the season on the line? Let's avoid that. Yeah, just quickly, I had 2 other. Top 6 was number 1 on my goal list. I think beating sub 500 teams. They only have 9 games left.
Good one
among the final 27. Another one I had on. I guess this list is going to be pretty long, but home dominance. They need to get back to doing really well in the Smoothie King Center. It seemed like they slipped a little bit there. And also, if I'm going to pick a number, if they can go 17-10, they win 50 games.
Jim,
and that's the second best.
I've been around you too much, Jim. I was thinking the same thing.
That'd be the second best record in franchise history. So, it's not mandatory that they do that, but I'd be really happy if they went 17-10, won 50 games, and had the second best market.
And the thing about it is too, when you're playing all these East teams, if you keep winning, all the other teams that we're bunched up with, they're playing each other. So somebody's got to lose.
Right.
So you can gain ground if you, again, 17-10 is, I think, very bold.
Sure.
I like it though. But if you can get 17 wins and get to 50, we're going to be top 6 just because everybody's going to knock each other out.
Yeah, no doubt. My goal is simple: 6 seed. I think you write it on the bulletin board. I think every single day of practice, you bring that up because that's what you want. You want to guarantee yourselves at least 4 games of first round series. 15-12, I think maybe you can do it. 16-11, I think you're a 6 seed.
Yeah.
I honestly do. Final question for you guys. Other West team you'll be watching closely as it relates to the Pels standing wise. And why are you smiling already?
Because there's no answer. It's Sacramento, Dallas, Phoenix, Lakers, and Golden State. Pull against them every night, people.
Yeah.
Pull against those teams every single night. And like I said, the top 4 is established. If one of those top 4 teams are playing Dallas or Golden State, you're pulling for Oklahoma City. You're pulling for Minnesota. You're pulling for the Clippers. You're pulling for Denver. Look, it's about us getting in, and if that's the way it is, we'll worry about those teams when we get into the playoffs.
A full scoreboard watching season is upon us. We are definitely pulling for different people every night. There's only 4 games in the loss column that separate the bottom 6 teams right now to get into the West. So, it's such a tight race that all of those games matter, but I personally am really looking at the Suns just because 6 would be nice. Obviously 5th would be better. I said it earlier. So if you can somehow usurp the Phoenix Suns, that would be awesome.
I picked the Mavericks, and really my main thing with that, I'm with you on Phoenix too. I feel like the Suns are playing so well lately, especially over the last 2 months since they've been close to healthy, that I feel like they're going to be in the top 6. So whether it's Suns 5th, Pelicans 6th, it doesn't really matter to me, the order of those 2 necessarily. But I feel like Dallas is maybe going to be the team that has the most say as far as whether the Pelicans do finish in the top 6. Sacramento's right there as well. But as we talked a little bit about, Pelicans have done really well against them, and they have the tiebreaker. Dallas tiebreaker is a little up in the air, or a lot more up in the air. So I think right now the Mavericks are the team that I'm going to be closely watching over the last 27 games.
Yeah, to me, it's kind of like you're saying Phoenix, but Dallas is one of those teams that
they improved the most over the trade deadline. When they got Gafford, even PJ Washington, but when they got Gafford, I was like, oh boy, because he is really, really good. And look, first game he played, the guy hadn't even gotten his jersey fitted, and he went 19-9 in 17 minutes because Luka was just lobbing it to him.
Yeah, we'll see what takes place. Erin, thanks as always.
Yeah, definitely. It's fun, guys. I can't wait to get going. We got 3 this weekend.
The key summers, 27 games, and they're all relevant. And that is all you can ask for. It's going to be a fun ride down the stretch.
No doubt.
And we get 15 of them at home. So that's huge too. It's going to be here in New Orleans.
That is even better.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I think as you kind of alluded to, Graf, we've had a lot of years where either the month of April was kind of playing out the string, or even going back further, the second half of the season, it was kind of like, there were a lot of seasons where it was like you're 4 or 5 games out of 8th place before they had the play-in, and it's like you're kind of in the race, but not really. So it's fun right now to have the best record they've had at the All-Star break in more than 10 years. I think 2008 is the best winning percentage they've had at this point in the season. So this is fun. This is where it really becomes enjoyable to me.
Erin E. Summers, where to give a follow over on X. Of course, she is the Pels sideline reporter. In the next couple of games, she'll be filling in for the vacationing John DeShazer. She'll be doing color with the Graph. At NT Graph is the way to give him a follow over on X as well. Thank you guys for the Radio Roundtable.
Thank you.
All right, Jim, that was fun. We could easily have done that a lot longer than that because we have so much you can get into, but that's the point. The final 27 games mean so much, and there's so many ways to kind of look at the final 27, the amount of home games out of the 27, all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the remaining schedule is chock full of games that are going to be interesting. You know, one of the things, though, that's a little unique about the Pelicans' schedule that I noticed when I was looking at the standings, the Pelicans have the least games left against the Western Conference of any team in the West. They only have 11 games left in the conference out of the 27. There's actually, and I didn't look at all of the Eastern Conference. I looked at the contending teams, the teams that are in the playoff hunt. The Bucks, Pacers, and Heat all have more games left against the West than the Pelicans do, even though the Pelicans are in the Western Conference. So that's something that we're going to have to monitor as well, is that it's not just, some of the games that we talked about as far as the Phoenix games and Sacramento, one more game. But the Pelicans, it's also going to be very important that they do well against a lot of these teams they have coming up on the schedule that they don't really have any significance in terms of head-to-head because they're all Eastern teams. But the Pelicans are 10-4 so far against the East, and they have to really continue that. So they actually have I mentioned 16. They have 16 games left against the East. They've only played 14 so far, which is so strange the way that it's set up. But just the way that the schedule has laid out, that's going to be a huge factor. They have 14 home games left total. 8 of them are against teams that have a record worse than the Pelicans. So I'm not talking about 500 or better. I'm talking about the Pelicans have a better record than 8 of the 14 games they have left in the Smoothie King Center. So it's going to be important as well for them to take care of business, which I referenced when I mentioned how they have to be able to beat sub-500 teams consistently.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. It is Wednesday. It feels like a Monday, though, getting back at it, which means it is Western Conference Wednesday, Jim, so have at it.
Yeah, I'm going to try to pack in everything that we do on Wednesdays and Mondays into one Wednesday show because we have quite an abbreviated week. The Western Conference Wednesday team to watch for last week was Golden State. They lost at home against the Clippers. Then they came back and had a really entertaining, compelling win at Utah. Golden State's now 27 and 26th. They're 5 games behind the Pelicans. So even though Golden State's been playing much better lately and they've been hot, New Orleans still has a pretty good cushion over Golden State, and let's hope that stays that way. The team to watch this week in the Western Conference for me, and I referenced this in the roundtable, coincidentally, is the Dallas Mavericks. The Mavericks are 32 and 23, which is 1 game behind the Pelicans. Mavericks are on a 6-game winning streak. But beyond the obvious of how close they are in the standings to the Pelicans, the reason I picked them for the team to watch over the next 7 days is really their schedule. They're home on Thursday against Phoenix, and then they have 2 road games, Sunday at Indiana, Tuesday at Cleveland. So you're talking about a very difficult stretch here coming up where they play the Suns, Pacers, and Cavs, all teams that are over 500, and really, especially Phoenix and Cleveland, have been 2 of the hottest teams in the league. Cleveland's been, arguably the best team in the league over the last, couple months. So Mavericks are the team to watch for me on Western Conference Wednesday. And real quickly, I'll get into the player of the week for last week, which was also kind of a abbreviated stretch where the Pelicans only played 2 games. That was Zion Williamson. That was the second time in the last 3 weeks that he's won player of the week. So as Graf kind of referenced, he's amping up right now. He's getting to the point where we feel like we're starting to see the true full version of Zion Williamson. He averaged 25 points a game in those 2 games, shot 56% from the field, got to the line a total of 16 times, averaged 6 assists. So just across the board, he was great. And my player to watch for these 3 games that we have coming up against, Houston, Miami, Chicago, Thursday, Friday, Sunday, all in the Smoothie King Center, I went with Jose Alvarado as a player to watch for 2 reasons. One, we love to see the impact that he can make in home games. And like I said, every game in this period of the NBA, the way that they schedule, the way they do the weeks is home games for the Pelicans. And also just he's been so crucial in some of their recent wins where they've kind of looked a little sluggish, a little slow out of the gate. He comes in and supercharges the effort and the energy. The game in particular that I remember from recently was that game in San Antonio where I think without him they don't win the game. He's had a couple other games where at the end of the night you said, man, it's a good thing that he's in the rotation and that he played a good amount of minutes, especially in the second half, because they might not have been able to pull out a win without him.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Give Jim a follow over on X at Jim_Eichenhofer. And as always, appreciate the time. We'll see you again on Friday. Game 2 of a back-to-back. Pels get back at it tomorrow at the Smoothie King Center. 3 of the next 4 days starting tomorrow will be Pelicans games. So looking forward to that as well. We always appreciate you for tuning us in on the Pelicans Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast. Join us 3 times per week on Pelicans.com, the Pelicans mobile app, the iHeartRadio app, or where you get your podcasts. And be sure to give Jim and Gus a follow on X at Jim_Eichenhofer and GCat_17. We'll see you next time, right here on the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast.